Welcome to the Wrasslun Show. I'm at Adam Kota. That's at Matthew Sucrum. Matt, another week in the world of professional wrestling has gone by, and everybody is talking about the Mae Young Classic. Have you had a chance to see any of the episodes yet?
I'm a dad now, so I basically work and then watch my kids.
You know?
No, but
I'm not going to buy that. I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. Because every time I ask Jeff DeHaan, at the Go Home Spot, if he's done something, he always says, I'm a dad, I don't have time. And even he made time to watch the Mae Young Classic.
Jeff has one kid that can kind of take care of himself a little bit. My kids are still at that stage where they are so useless and so dependent on other human beings, aka daddy. So maybe in a month or so I can get back into my regular routine of watching weekly wrestling. Also,
wait, before we go any further, are you saying
if you don't say too loudly, I might be able to get the wrestling network, the WWE network, without my wife knowing.
Oh, wait. Well, I mean, you should be able to, since it sounds to me like you're saying she does nothing to help out with raising your children, and that she's a bad mother. That's what you're saying.
No.
Are you sure?
Not exactly.
That's what I'm hearing.
But if you're reading between the lines, no. She's awesome.
If you're reading between the lines, no. That's also not what I'm saying.
No, she's awesome. We've got a pretty good system down pat, and she's already back to work. Our kids are only 2 months and she's already back to work.
Well, that's great. But you know what, Matt? This isn't the Matthew's Baby podcast. It's the Wrasslun Show podcast. So we're going to talk about some wrestling and people who like wrestling, specifically our new twits.
Yay!
It's Matt's favorite segment every week, where we talk about the people who choose to follow us at the Wrestling Show
at their own risk.
And this week, it's all about one person. You probably heard Jeff DeHaan talking about him on his podcast, The Go Home Spot, because I guess that this segment is so popular that other members of our network have to rip us off. Jeff.
Is that what Jeff is doing now?
Jeff.
Hey, leave the twits to us, Jeff.
Yeah, pretty soon you're going to be driving. Wait a minute. Did he steal your idea for your television show, Riding Shotgun?
For those who don't know, I have my own television show called Riding Shotgun, and it's basically the Go Home Spot, but not about wrestling.
That
on TV though, not in podcast form.
I claim gimmick infringement.
Yep.
Jeff DeHaan.
Get our lawyers on this now.
Debbie, are you listening? She's
HR.
She's
this
HR.
Is an HR issue.
And she's also legal. She's had enough run-ins with the law that we thought she would make a good legal department head of the department. Okay.
Who's the new? I'm trying to find. Who's our new follower? Who's our new twit?
He's going to be very insulted when he heard that you didn't recognize the UC soldier himself. Michael Walsh is our only new twit this week.
Mike, baby.
And this is, again, this has been ruined for you if you've listened to the Go Home Spot already. Thanks, Jeff. But his Twitter handle is at UC Soldier, and his profile, I got Twitter for one reason and one reason only. So Adam Kota and Matthew Sucrum would talk about me on the Wrasslun Show.
Well, that should be the only reason you're getting Twitter these days.
It really is.
So that we will talk about you.
And Mr. Walsh, Mike, Ice Dog, whatever gimmick you want to go by, See Hi Black today. Mike, thank you very much for following us on Twitter. Everybody go out and follow him on Instagram, Sharp Knife Dining. He's going to become a huge what would it be? Culinary connoisseur.
Yes.
He already
I was
has.
going to say culinary magician, but
I like that.
yes.
Mike,
you can use that.
Mike will be stuffing the chicken and then pulling a rabbit out of it. Whether it will be cooked or not,
It's up to you.
That depends on what kind of package you want to buy from Sharp Knife Dining.
Also, Mike and I used to have a band, by the way.
Let's talk. You know what? I really feel like since he was nice enough to follow us on Twitter and put in his profile that we're the only reasons he's done so, I feel like we probably should share a Mike Walsh story or two. So go ahead.
So we worked together at Swish LH/Harvey's when we were both going to college. And he was like, hey, do you like music? And I was like, yeah, I like music. And then we started a band. I can't even remember how it actually came apart.
I feel like Walsh would play the bongos. Was he a bongo player?
No, he was our bass player, but yeah, he
slapping the bass.
He was slapping the bass pretty good. Actually, here's a good Mike Walsh story. So he is a Ottawa Senators fan, and me and my manager at Switch LA were big Leaf fans. So he comes in, he's wearing like this new Sens hat, and he's like showing it off because the Sens were actually good at that point, and Leafs were in that era of sucking. And we're like, screw this guy, screw him and his Ottawa Senators. So I was like, you should go over and tell him that he can't wear any Sens paraphernalia in the restaurant. She did one better. She went over and said she had to let him go
because he was wearing Sens stuff.
But she carried it on. She was like, listen, Mike, I hate to tell you this, but we're gonna have to let you go. And he goes, what? And I'm like hiding behind the corner because I'm already laughing, but I can see what's happening. And she's like, you've overstepped the line, and it's time to let you go. And he's like, whatever I did, I apologize, blah, blah. And he was like so freaked out. And she goes, you know the rules. You are not allowed to wear any Ottawa Senators paraphernalia. And he goes, F off. He just walked away. He's like, I can't believe I bought it. Like, you had me for a second.
That is kind of the perfect Mike Walsh response as well. If you know Mike Walsh, he would not be a good fit for the Wrasslun show.
Him and Drew Ferris, Sir F, just started their own podcast, but it's just basically half an hour of the bleep button.
Well, listen, I was going to kind of save this for later, but since, Jeff already talked about him on the podcast and was very nice enough to mention him and plug his stuff, I felt like we had to one-up Jeff because, we're the OG podcast on this network.
Jeff, what are you doing?
We feel like we had to be better. So I'm going to let everyone in a little secret. Mike Walsh is a name you're probably going to get to know very well here on the Wrestling Show Network if all things go smoothly over the next few weeks. And that's all I will say because I don't want to promise anything, make any promises I can't keep. But let's just say Mike Walsh knows an awful lot about professional wrestling, and that maybe knowledge we'll be putting to good use here on the Wrestling Show Network in the future. We'll leave you with that.
Now I'm excited.
As you should be.
We should just end the show right there.
Well, we still have probably about 20 minutes or so worth of material to get through, and it probably shouldn't be hard given today's topic. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about today's topic and what inspired us to chat about it?
Well, the inspiration was some of the matches on the card for No Mercy, especially the John Cena, Roman Reigns mega match coming up.
And, of course, probably some would say the Braun Strowman, Brock Lesnar match as well.
And I got to thinking, are there mega matches anymore? And do they matter? And is WWE giving those matches away too early and in the wrong spots?
Well, let's address each of those questions and
A,
break
B,
it down.
C, and D.
Let's break it down as best we can. So the first question is, are there mega matches anymore, or dream matches, essentially? What's your take on that, Matt? What do you think?
So, dream match, as far as dream matches go, I don't think there's a ton of dream matches left to be built up because, let's face it, WWE's taken over as far as the wrestling landscape throughout most of North America and a lot of the world. And they're up here, and every other promotion is pretty much down here. So those promotions, you don't have the WCW and the ECW anymore, where they're creating quote unquote superstars or megastars, where you're not watching Monday Night Raw and seeing Stone Cold Steve Austin going, boy, it'd be awesome to see him stun Goldberg. You're not getting that anymore. So that's why I think the dream matches are starting to fade away, because there's no other promotions that are building mega stars. Now, to the indie fans, the hardcore wrestling fans, sure, I'm sure there's a ton of guys on the indie scene that that people are going, it'd be great to see this guy go up against this guy. It'd be great, Kevin Owens and John Cena. That was probably an indie fan's dream match, to see Kevin Owens finally go toe-to-toe with John Cena. But that's all you're getting. You're not where only maybe half the audience understands the magnitude of the match. I don't think you are ever going to get that Rock Cena, Rock Hogan, Triple H Goldberg, Triple H Sting matchup ever again, because WWE is the only company that's truly building those monumental mega stars that everybody knows who they are.
Is it that there are no dream matches left, or is it because WWE is so far ahead of the pack when it comes to other pro wrestling promotions that when someone signs, we're all but guaranteed that any of those matches are eventually going to happen? Whereas when we had those Monday Night Wars, it wasn't necessarily so cut and dry that, eventually we're going to get this. And I would go so far as to say that I'm not sure that was the case. When Sting signed with WWE, even though he was still late in the game, there were still a ton of matches that we never eventually got to see due to some injuries. Now, clearly, we could say that about a lot of guys. Steve Austin is another great
1000%.
example. Edge, or guys who have just up and left the business. I'm sure there's lots of folks out there who would still love to match CM Punk against Aleister Black, or some of the other great talents that are in the WWE right now. But we're probably not going to get to see those matches because Punk's likely never going to come back to the WWE, and Austin is pretty much done with professional wrestling. So where does it come from then? This if the WWE is building their own stars, and if the fact that they all work for the same company has taken away from that dream match status, where do we get it from? And I think you kind of alluded to it in all of those names that you list. The Rock, Triple H, Brock Lesnar, Undertaker, legends, part-timers. These are guys that still have drawing power. And maybe this is the reason why they get brought in for those big-time events, because they're the last dream matches.
I was going to say that's also sort of the frustrating part is, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, is, Goldberg versus Lesnar Part 2. I mean, it wasn't that the outcome I didn't like. It was almost the build towards it. The three matches they had, the Survivor Series match, the Royal Rumble encounter in the Rumble, and then their finale at Mania. That's great long-term storytelling, fantastic. But it was a stuff in between. It was the match between Goldberg and Owens. That was like, oh, that was it. That's something that I felt could have been a dream match, but they went the squash route.
They went the Goldberg route.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's Goldberg's character.
And that's where it gets frustrating. And I remember saying this to Andrew Kent when he was talking about, the matches for Mania, and he wasn't, well, how he feels about Haas matches. He wasn't particularly interested in seeing Lesnar Goldberg or Lesnar Goldberg fighting anyone. I'm like, really? You don't think in 5 years from now we're going to be sitting here going, man, it's too bad we didn't get Goldberg Rollins, or a Goldberg Balor. I mean, Balor was injured at the time, but something like that.
Goldberg Strowman.
Thank you. I mean, that's where the frustration comes in, is when they do bring in part-timers, but it's like, well, we've already seen that. So that and that's where I agree with you, where the part-timers do lend a hand in creating those dream matches, but it's far and few between, which it should be. A dream match doesn't happen every week, but it's almost like they need to kind of recalculate who the best opponents are to build up that mega match.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the Lesnar-Goldberg feud, because it actually plays a big part in a point I want to make about another question that we had from this topic, and we're going to get to that. What do you want from your wrestling podcasts?
Analysis and insight on what's happening in the world of WWE and beyond.
The Wrasslun Show Network has it.
Subjects ranging from celebrated to surreal, ranked from top to bottom.
The Wrasslun Show Network has it.
In-depth discussion of the most important topics in the business.
The Wrasslun Show Network has it.
Pro wrestling and pop culture colliding.
The Wrasslun Show Network has it.
The Go Home Spot.
We have till 5.
The Wrasslun Show.
Ropes to reels.
Whatever you want, whatever you need from your wrestling podcast, we've got it all on the Wrasslun Show Network, where everything is wrestling and wrestling is everything. All right, Matt, so you brought up the idea of Lesnar Goldberg, and I wanted to talk about this because it ties into a point I wanted to make about one of the questions we asked at the start of the show, which is, are we getting these mega matches too soon? Are we getting them on a B-level pay-per-view? This, of course, comes from the idea that both Strowman and Lesnar, as well as Reigns and Cena, were originally rumored to be WrestleMania matches. So why are we getting them at No Mercy? The reason I wanted to bring up Lesnar and Goldberg is because I think that series proves that the two main event matches that we're getting at No Mercy can still be Mania main events. You don't have to do everything consecutively. This feud between Roman Reigns and John Cena doesn't have to start at No Mercy and end at the Royal Rumble. Using Lesnar Goldberg as an example, they had 2 matches. And I guess you could count the Royal Rumble as a third placement holder for a match. But the point is that they fought a series of matches that led to the big blow off at WrestleMania. I see no reason why Reigns and Cena couldn't have a match here, then maybe one at Survivor Series, although I think it would be more interesting to put them on the same team at that point. Maybe they have a rematch at the Royal Rumble and it's still not resolved, and then maybe they have the big blow off at WrestleMania. Same thing could be said for Lesnar and Strowman. The best example I can give is Batista-Undertaker. Their feud started in 2007 and didn't end until... started in 2007 in March for WrestleMania, and I don't think it ended until the next year sometime. They had a series of like 6 matches, I think, and they were spread out over that time frame. And that's kind of the point I'm making about the mega matches being early. I don't think this is necessarily... I don't think John Cena versus Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman needs first time ever to be on that WrestleMania marquee for it to still be a WrestleMania match. In fact, I think it would be better if it was a blow-off match, if it was an important point in their story that they're telling. Nobody pays the top dollar for the first chapter of the book, but they'll all pay to know how it ends. And that's really the point I wanted to make with that in terms of getting them too early. So the answer to that question, I think, is no. I think we're not getting these matches too early.
And that also comes into the fact that it can still be a dream match, even if we've seen it before. Look at Rock Austin when they went toe-to-toe at WrestleMania X7. Remember, they had fought over the Intercontinental title 2 years, at least 2, maybe 3 years before that point. And that was a hot feud, and it just built and built and built. And because they were so familiar with each other, it was a great match at X7. Even Rock Triple H, how many times did they go toe-to-toe? Again, they started feuding over the Intercontinental title when they were both rookies, and it built up to one of probably the best main event in Backlash history when Austin came back. And I mean, the crowd was going nuts for that. So Yeah, it's also gaining that familiarity. So if it's on a B pay-per-view and you know you need to draw eyes to that pay-per-view anyway, so why not draw it with names? When it comes time to the big event, the Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, the Mania, if they put on a good show at No Mercy, you're going, what are they going to do to step it up? What are they going to do to top that? And also, now that they know each other a little bit more in the ring, you're probably going to get a more fluid match, right? Not saying that they're unprofessional and it's not going to be good the first time around, but man, when you have two people in there that know each other's tendencies and know exactly what to expect from the other guy, that's when you get gold. And so while I do understand the frustration or annoyance in seeing the guy, John Cena, versus the chosen guy, Roman Reigns, at No Mercy. I get it. Just wait till what they could be doing 3 months, 4 months from now.
But I also think that it's important to look back at some of the history in WWE. Eric Bischoff once said something on Off the Record, which I've brought up on this podcast before, so I'm sorry for all the fans who listen to every episode that we put out. Thank you, but it is going to get repetitive at this point. He said, I could take a pay-per-view every single month and put this guy against this guy and make a lot of money. And then this guy against this guy the next month and make a lot of money. And then this guy and this guy the next month and make a lot of money. But at the end of the year, we haven't told any stories. And that's really what this is about. I know we're going to catch some flack from the people who like to classify wrestling as a sport. But as far as I'm concerned, my opinion is that it's entertainment. And you're telling stories out there. Whether you're telling them bell to bell or whether you're telling them episode to episode with the angles outside the ring, you're telling stories with characters and you're telling stories that are supposed to get people invested. And that takes time. And there's no reason why you can't tell those stories over a long period of time. And the reason I bring up that quote from Eric Bischoff is that if you look back on that Monday Night Raw era, that Attitude Era that so many fans lament as like the greatest in professional wrestling, if you look at their pay-per-view schedule, it's pretty hard to sit there and say, well, this wasn't a WrestleMania quality match or this wasn't a Big Four match, headlining almost every single one of their events. Now, that does also speak to the fact that you had an unprecedented amount of mega superstars in the company at that time. When you have Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker, Triple H, Bret Hart, and Shawn Michaels under your roof, or on the other side, not to exclude WCW fans, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Goldberg, Sting, Diamond Dallas Page, all under one roof, it's hard not to have a WrestleMania or a Starrcade level pay-per-view main event every single month. But the point is, if they had saved every single one of those big matches for WrestleMania, no one would ever buy any of the other pay-per-views. And I think with the WWE Network trying to increase its numbers, more and more, some of those marquee matches on the less popular historically, pay-per-views are important. This is another reason why, despite the fact that you and I both agree that that's kind of ridiculous, the gimmick pay-per-view has become so important to their business model. Because by doing those gimmick matches, it gives fans a reason to tune in because it's a marquee match. It's something different. It's something we're only going to see once a year.
But don't you think when it comes to storytelling, and now this is going a little off topic, the story should build to that match? John Cena versus Roman Reigns should build to a Hell in a Cell, not just because it's that time of the month.
Oh, 100%. I agree with you 100% with that. But maybe this is why it's important to... I shouldn't say it's important, but you can do that with these gimmick pay-per-views as well. Just make sure that you're keeping track of your stories. Like, I'll give you a great example. Brock Lesnar broke Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania 30. And then we didn't see The Undertaker for a while until he came out and challenged Brock Lesnar at next year's SummerSlam. So they waited a year and 6 months for them to have their rematch. After it was over, Undertaker cheated to beat Brock Lesnar, and everyone said, oh man, it's tied up 1-1. Obviously, we're getting the blow off at WrestleMania. Do you remember when we got the actual blow-off match? 2 months later at Hell in a Cell. It was
Right.
Brock Lesnar versus Undertaker. But that's appropriate. What other spectacle, what other match would be appropriate for a blow-off that
right.
huge? And if everyone remembers, it was also one of the best matches of the year.
Right.
And I'm sure
that's right.
and I'm sure they sold more than a few pay-per-views by having that on there.
And
so
yes.
I agree with you. That is exactly the way those kinds of pay-per-views should be utilized.
Yes, and if you're keeping track of it, fine. That's more than appropriate from my standpoint. I was also going to point out, you also have to look at the adage of what's hot right now. And right now, Braun Strowman is very hot.
100% agree.
And Lesnar is still selling pay-per-views. So why wait? Especially with the history of injuries. I'm not saying they're both Band-Aids, but Braun had a setback earlier this year, and I think WWE might be starting to realize that waiting is not the best course of action. I mean, the Seth Rollins, his run as a champion got cut short because of an injury. Finn Balor's run as a champion lasted all of 24 hours. So why wait? It's a physical sport, and it hurts, and sometimes it hurts a lot. So you might as well go with what's working and go with what's hot while the fire is still burning. I mean, look at this year's Royal Rumble with Ty Dillinger entering at number 10. And people are going, why are they doing that if he's not even being called? Because at the time he wasn't being called up. It was a novelty act for the Royal Rumble at that point. And
It was a publicity stunt.
Yeah. And I said, because he's so hot right now with that number 10 gimmick, a year from now, that might not be, Ty Dillinger might not be at that height he is right now, and that perfect 10 thing might fade away, or he might be a heel a year from now. You don't know. So bring him up, put him in at number 10, because the fans will go nuts for it. And I think that the WWE is starting to go in that direction of, if it's hot, let's do it.
There have been so many missed opportunities over time due to people not taking that opportunity. So I agree. If there's an angle that's hot, you should take it and jump on it, Tonto. You know what I mean? But maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's why we get so many part-timers in those main events at WrestleMania now, because they know we're going to have these dream matches throughout the year. If we're going to pay the big bucks for these part-timers and bring them in for these mega matches once a year, let's make sure we can do it on the biggest stage where we know we can guarantee their involvement, because they're not going to get hurt. They're not going to, have those kind of problems in between. At least that's the way I look at it, as a possible reason as to why.
Do you think part-timers are taking away from the spotlight of the up-and-coming stars? Because that's something else that you didn't get a lot of in the Attitude Era. WWE built up its stars and made you care about the stars all the way from the low card to the mid card to finally seeing them main event. And right now, it feels like the roster on both Raw and SmackDown are full of guys that should be champions, could be champions, have been champions, but now aren't, because Brock Lesnar is the champion, or something like that is happening. You know what I mean? Is that something that concerns you? Because to me, I like having part-timers in the right roles. I don't necessarily agree with them having the championship.
I do agree with that. But at the same time, my thought is that without these part-timers around, there's something lost from those dream matches. Because like you said, it feels like a lot of them don't exist anymore. And maybe that's also a problem of television. Back in the day, you would only pay to see superstar matches on house shows or pay-per-views. these days, you'll see him every
there.
Raw, every SmackDown. So you have to continuously put a new twist on an old favorite. And sometimes, if you do that too much, like Eric Bischoff said, at the end of a year, what stories have you told?
And that's where we're going to leave it tonight.
And that's where we're going to leave it tonight, with that Eric Bischoff quote. So thank you, Easy for that. And thank you, Matt Sukram, for joining me this week. We appreciate you being here. And thank you to everybody who listened. Your call to action, tweet us at Adam Kota, at Matthew Sukram, at The Wrasslun Show. And let us know a dream match you have. That is possible. Believe me, I would like to see, the Macho Man Randy Savage versus AJ Styles as much as anybody, but we know that's not going to happen. So give us a dream match that could actually happen. Matt, have you got like a current, looking at the roster right now, can you see a dream match of like somebody, a matchup you'd like to see happen?
Does Shawn Michaels versus AJ Styles count? Because that would be,
I'll say yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's retired, but it's not impossible. He could come back if he really wanted to do that. So yeah, I'll count that as a possibility.
Yeah, I also think if we eventually get like a Lesnar AJ Styles main event would be pretty cool, or because they're on opposite shows right now, I'll say Balor and Shinsuke. If they continue on the path that they're on right now, could be a pretty big dream match down the road.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that'd be a fantastic one too. If I had to pick a dream match right now, you know what? Honestly, I'm going to go with a match that was rumored about for a while and never ended up happening. I'd love to see Kevin Owens and Brock Lesnar. I think those two could tear the house down against one another just because they're two big, hard-hitting guys that don't back down, don't take crap from anyone. So that's what I'd like to see. But we want to know what you think. And until next time, you know what to do. Listen, share, subscribe, repeat.